Welcome. Join James and his curious insect friends on a strange adventure.
Chapter 27. James Henry Thr and his companions crouched close together on top of the peach as the night began closing in around them. Clouds like mountains towered high above their heads on all sides, mysterious, menacing, overwhelming. Gradually, it grew darker and darker, and then a pale three-quarter moon came up over the tops of the clouds and cast an eerie light over the whole scene. The giant peach swayed gently from side to side as it floated along, and the hundreds of silky white strings going upward from its stem were beautiful in the moonlight. So also was the great flock of seagulls overhead. There was not a sound anywhere. Traveling upon the peach was not in the least like traveling in an aeroplane. The aeroplane comes clattering and roaring through the sky, and whatever might be lurking secretly up there in the great cloud mountains goes running for cover at its approach. That is why people who travel in aeroplanes never see anything. But the peach, yes, the peach was a soft, stealthy traveler, making no noise at all as it floated along. And several times during that long silent night ride, high up over the middle of the ocean in the moonlight, James and his friends saw things that no one had ever seen before. Once, as they drifted silently past a massive white cloud, they saw on top of it a group of strange, tall, wispy-looking things that were about twice the height of ordinary men. They were not easy to see at first because they were almost as white as the cloud itself, but as the peach sailed closer, it became obvious that these things were actually living creatures. Tall, wispy, rat-like, shadowy, white creatures who looked as though they were made out of a mixture of cotton wool and candy floss and thin white hairs. "Ooh," the ladybird said. "I don't like this at all." "Shh," James whispered back. "Don't let them hear you. They must be cloudmen." "Cloudmen?" they murmured, huddling closer together for comfort. Oh dear, I'm glad I'm blind and I can't see them," the earthworm said, "or I would probably scream. I hope they don't turn around and see us," Miss Spider stammered. "Do you think they would eat us?" the earthworm asked. "They would eat you," the centipede answered, grinning. "They would cut you up like a salami and eat you in thin slices." The poor earthworm began to quiver all over with fright. "But what are they doing?" the old green grasshopper whispered. "I don't know," James answered softly. "Let's watch and see." The cloudmen were all standing in a group, and they were doing something peculiar with their hands. First, they would reach out, all of them at once, and grab handfuls of cloud. Then they would roll these handfuls of cloud in their fingers until they turned into what looked like large white marbles. Then they would toss the marbles to one side and quickly grab more bits of cloud and start over again. It was all very silent and mysterious. The pile of marbles beside them kept growing larger and larger. Soon there was a truckload of them there at least. "They must be absolutely mad," the centipede said. "There's nothing to be afraid of here." "Be quiet, you pest," the earthworm whispered. "We shall all be eaten if they see us." But the cloudmen were much too busy with what they were doing to have noticed the great peach floating silently up behind them. Then the watchers on the peach saw one of the cloudmen raising his long, wispy arms above his head, and they heard him shouting, "All right, boys, that's enough. Get the shovels." And all the other cloudmen immediately let out a strange, high-pitched whoop of joy and started jumping up and down and waving their arms in the air. Then they picked up enormous shovels and rushed over to the pile of marbles and began shoveling them as fast as they could over the side of the cloud into space. "Down they go!" they chanted as they worked. "Down they go! Hail and snow, freezes and sneezes and noses will blow. It's hailstones!" whispered James excitedly. "They've been making hailstones and now they're showering them down onto the people in the world below." "Hailstones?" the centipede said. "That's ridiculous. This is summertime. You don't have hailstones in summertime." "They're practicing for the winter," James told him. "I don't believe it," shouted the centipede, raising his voice. "Shh," the other whispered. And James said softly, "For heaven's sake, centipede, don't make so much noise." The centipede roared with laughter. "Those imbeciles couldn't hear anything," cried. "They're deaf as doorknobs. You watch." And before anyone could stop him, he had cupped his front feet to his mouth and was yelling at the cloudman as loud as he could. "Idiots!" he yelled. "Nincompoops! Half-wits! Blunderheads! Asses! What on earth do you think you are doing over there?" The effect was immediate. The cloudmen jumped round as if they had been stung by wasps, and when they saw the great golden peach floating past them, not 50 yards away in the sky, they gave a yelp of surprise and dropped their shovels to the ground. And there they stood with the moonlight streaming down all over them, absolutely motionless, like a group of tall, white, hairy statues, staring and staring at the gigantic fruit as it went sailing by. The passengers on the peach, all except the centipede, sat frozen with terror, looking back at the cloudman and wondering what was going to happen next. "Now you've done it, you loathsome pest," whispered the earthworm to the centipede. "I'm not frightened of them," shouted the centipede. And to show everybody once again that he wasn't, he stood up to his full height and started dancing about and making insulting signs at the cloudman with all 42 of his legs. This evidently infuriated the cloudmen beyond belief. All at once, they spun around and grabbed great handfuls of hailstones and rushed to the edge of the cloud and started throwing them at the peach, shrieking with fury all the time. "Look out!" cried James. "Quick, lie down, lie flat on the deck." It was lucky they did. A large hailstone can hurt you as much as a rock or a lump of lead if it is thrown hard enough. And my goodness, how those cloudmen could throw! The hailstones came whizzing through the air like bullets from a machine gun, and James could hear them smashing against the sides of the peach and burying themselves in the peach flesh with horrible squelching noises. Plop, 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 plop. And then ping, ping, ping as they bounced off the poor ladybird's shell because she couldn't lie as flat as the others. And then crack as one of them hit the centipede right on the nose, and crack again as another one hit him somewhere else. "Ow!" he cried. "Ow! Stop! Stop! Stop!" But the cloudmen had no intention of stopping. James could see them rushing about on the cloud like a lot of huge hairy ghosts, picking up hailstones from the pile, dashing to the edge of the cloud, hurling the hailstones at the peach, dashing back again to get more, and then when the pile of stones was all gone, they simply grabbed handfuls of cloud and made as many more as they wanted, and much bigger ones now, some of them as large as cannonballs. "Quickly!" cried James. "Down the tunnel or we'll all be wiped out!" There was a rush for the tunnel entrance, and half a minute later, everybody was safely downstairs inside the stone of the peach, trembling with fright and listening to the noise of the hailstones as they came crashing against the side of the peach. "I'm a wreck!" groaned the centipede. "I'm wounded all over." "It serves you right," said the earthworm. "Would somebody kindly look and see if my shell is cracked?" the ladybird said. "Give us some light," shouted the old green grasshopper. "I can't," wailed the glowworm. "They've broken my bulb." "Then put in another one," the centipede said. Be quiet a moment, said James. Listen, I do believe they are not hitting us anymore. They all stopped talking and listened. Yes, the noise had ceased. The hailstones were no longer smashed against the pitch. We've left them behind. The seagulls must have pulled us away out of danger. Hooray! Let's go up and see. Cautiously, with James going first, they all climbed back up the tunnel. James poked his head out and looked around. It's all clear, he called. I can't see them anywhere. Chapter 28. One by one, the travelers came out again onto the top of the pitch and gazed carefully around. The moon was still shining as brightly as ever, and there were still plenty of huge shimmering cloud mountains on all sides. But there were no cloudmen in sight now. The pitch is leaking, shouted the old green grasshopper, peering over the side. It's full of holes, and the juice is dripping out everywhere. That does it, cried the earthworm. If the pitch is leaking, then we shall surely sink. Don't be an ass, the centipede told him. We are not in the water now. Oh, look, shouted the ladybird. Look, 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 over there. Everybody swung around to look. In the distance and directly ahead of them, they now saw a most extraordinary sight. It was a kind of arch, a colossal curvy-shaped thing that reached high up into the sky and came down again at both ends. The ends were resting upon a huge flat cloud that was as big as a desert. Now, what in the world is that? Asked James. It's a bridge. It's an enormous hoop cut in half. It's a giant horseshoe standing upside down. Stop me if I'm wrong, murmured the centipede, going white in the face. But might those not be cloudmen climbing all over it? There was a dreadful silence. The pitch floated closer and closer. They are cloudmen. There are hundreds of them. Thousands. Millions. I don't want to hear about it, shrieked the poor blind earthworm. I'd rather be on the end of a fish hook and used as bait than come up against those terrible creatures again. I'd rather be fried, alive and eaten by a Mexican, wailed the old green grasshopper. Please keep quiet, whispered James. It's our only hope. They crouched very still on top of the pitch, staring at the cloudmen. The whole surface of the cloud was literally swarming with them, and there were hundreds more up above climbing about on that monstrous, crazy arch. But what is that thing? Whispered the ladybird, and what are they doing to it? I don't care what they're doing to it, the centipede said, scuttling over to the tunnel entrance. I'm not staying up here. Goodbye. But the rest of them were too frightened or too hypnotized by the whole affair to make a move. Do you know what? James whispered. What? They said. What? That enormous arch. They seem to be painting it. They've got pots of paint and big brushes. You look. And he was quite right. The travelers were close enough now to see that this was exactly what the cloudmen were doing. They all had huge brushes in their hands and they were splashing the paint onto the great curvy arch in a frenzy of speed, so fast, in fact, that in a few minutes the whole of the arch became covered with the most glorious colors, reds, blues, greens, yellows, and purples. It's a rainbow, everyone said at once. They are making a rainbow. Oh, isn't it beautiful? Just look at those colors. Centipede, they shouted. You must come up and see this. They were so enthralled by the beauty and brilliance of the rainbow that they forgot to keep their voices low any longer. The centipede poked his head cautiously out of the tunnel entrance. Well, he said. I've always wondered how those things were made. But why all the ropes? What are they doing with those ropes? Good heavens, they are pushing it off the cloud, cried James. There it goes. They are lowering it down to the earth with ropes. And I'll tell you something else, the centipede said sharply. If I'm not greatly mistaken,
We ourselves are going to bump right into it. Bless my soul, he's right, the old green grasshopper exclaimed. The rainbow was now dangling in the air below the cloud. The pitch was also just below the level of the cloud, and it was heading directly towards the rainbow, traveling rather fast. We are lost, Miss Spider cried, wringing her feet again. The end has come. I can't stand it, wailed the earthworm. Tell me what's happening. We are going to miss it, shouted the ladybird. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Yes, no. Oh, my heavens. Hold on, everybody, James called out, and suddenly there was a tremendous thud as the pitch went crashing into the top of the rainbow. This was followed by an awful splintering noise as the enormous rainbow snapped right across the middle and became two separate pieces. The next thing that happened was extremely unfortunate. The ropes that the cloudmen had been using for lowering the rainbow got tangled up with the silk strings that went up from the pitch to the seagulls. The pitch was trapped. Panic and pandemonium broke out among the travelers, and James Henry Trotter, glancing up quickly, saw the faces of 1,000 furious cloudmen peering down at him over the edge of the cloud. The faces had almost no shape at all because of the long white hairs that covered them. There were no noses, no mouths, no ears, no chins. Only the eyes were visible in each face, two small black eyes glinting malevolently through the hairs. Then came the most frightening thing of all. One cloudman, a huge hairy creature who must have been 14 feet tall at least, suddenly stood up and made a tremendous leap off the side of the cloud, trying to get to one of the silk strings above the pitch. James and his friends saw him go flying through the air above them, his arms outstretched in front of him, reaching for the nearest string, and they saw him grab it and cling to it with his hands and legs. And then, very, very slowly, hand over hand, he began to come down the string. Mercy! Help! Save us! Cried the ladybird. He's coming down to eat us! Wailed the old green grasshopper. Jump overboard! Then eat the earthworm first! Shouted the centipede. It's no good eating me. I'm full of bones like a keeper. Centipede! Yelled James. Quickly! Bite through that string, the one he's coming down on. The centipede rushed over to the stem of the peach and took the silk string in his teeth and bit through it with one snap of his jaws. Immediately, far above them, a single seagull was seen to come away from the rest of the flock and go flying off with a long string trailing from its neck. And clinging desperately to the end of the string, shouting and cursing with fury, was the huge hairy cloudman. Up and up he went, swinging across the moonlit sky, and James Henry Trotter, watching him with delight, said, My goodness, he must weigh almost nothing at all for one seagull to be able to pull him up like that. He must be all hair and air. The rest of the cloudmen were so flabbergasted at seeing one of their company carried away in this manner that they let go the ropes they were holding, and then, of course, down went the rainbow, both halves of it together, tumbling towards the earth below. This freed the peach, which at once began sailing away from that terrible cloud. But the travelers were not in the clear yet. The infuriated cloudmen jumped up and ran after them along the cloud, pelting them mercilessly with all sorts of hard and horrible objects. Empty paint buckets, paintbrushes, step ladders, stools, saucepans, frying pans, rotten eggs, dead rats, bottles of hair oil, anything those brutes could lay their hands on came raining down upon the peach. One cloudman, taking very careful arm, tipped a gallon of thick purple paint over the edge of the cloud right onto the centipede himself. The centipede screamed with anger. My legs, he cried. They are all sticking together. I can't walk. And my eyelids won't open. I can't see. And my boots are ruined. But for the moment, everyone was far too busy dodging the things that the cloudmen were throwing to pay any attention to the centipede. The paint is drying, he moaned. It's going hard. I can't move my legs. I can't move anything. You can still move your mouth, the earthworm said, and that is a great pity. James, bawled the centipede, please help me. Wash off this paint. Scrape it off. Anything.
Let's summarize. Remember the 5 words below and fill the blanks in the next page. Float, hurl, crawl, discover, snaps. James and his friends float on a giant peach high above the clouds. They watch strange cloudmen roll clouds into hailstones and hurl them at the peach. Frightened, the friends crawl inside the peach and wait until the hailstorm ends. When they come out, they discover the cloudmen are painting a huge, colorful rainbow. The peach hits the rainbow hard and the rainbow snaps into 2.
Great job, everyone! Thanks for watching. See you next time.